I literally couldn't care less about COP28. I think the whole thing is a total farce. The King, David Cameron, Rishi Sunak have all taken separate private jets to go to a talking shop in an oil state to help promote policies that, as far as I can tell, will quite possibly just make poor people poorer. The absolute audacity of billionaires firing goodness knows how much CO2 into the atmosphere to go and meet up with other billionaires so they can encourage Dorothy from number 42 to spend thousands on a heat pump and swallow the cost of a new ULEZ charge that won't make a blind bit of difference to the environment. It's a comedy show. Dr. Sultan Al Jaber is president of the Climate Summit, and he's also the head of the United Arab Emirates State Oil Company. Is that not a little bit like putting an XL bully in charge of childcare at the local nursery? Now, in an absolutely shocking turn of events that nobody could have seen coming, it turns out that the UAE was planning to use the Climate Summit, where the world's leaders all gather, to strike more oil and gas deals. There is something quite telling, I think, about where they've decided to host this Climate Summit. So in Dubai, a place where protesters would be banned from entering or detained immediately if they kicked off, plonking a very controversial Climate Summit in a place where no opposition is allowed is actually quite a good example of the kind of totalitarian climate stuff that very often goes on. The whole thing, in my view, is quite totalitarian. Banning new petrol and diesel cars, using contested science to drive forward unpopular policies. Sadiq Khan in London stands accused of misleading the public over the benefits of ULEZ by using alleged misinformation in adverts. The adverts, which were broadcast and published between January and June, claimed that the existing ULEZ in central London had, quotes, almost halved the levels of nitrogen dioxide and that most air pollution-related deaths actually occur in outer London. But a draft of a watchdog's conclusions leaked to the Sunday Telegraph found that the ULEZ adverts were misleading because they did not clarify that claims about NO2 levels were based on estimates or model scenarios and not actual figures. It's the modelling again, isn't it? But every time you blink, more of your hard-earned money is being given away by our politicians to push the big green agenda. You might have missed this, but Rishi Sunak is giving about £1.6 billion to restore the United Kingdom's reputation as a leader in tackling climate change by committing to spend the money on projects in Africa and Asia and tackle deforestation and energy innovation. He should be using that money to restore his reputation at home, if you ask me. Who do these world leaders think they are? Just look at the way they live their lives. They are the ones damaging the environment, not us. Stop paying. Stop making us pay for all of your pointless vanity projects. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent joins us, TOWIE star Junaid Ahmed, and editor-at-large for The Mail on Sunday. It is Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, I'll start with you. Look, it's very, very contested, this stuff at COP28. How do you feel about the, I would call it hypocrisy, of certainly three of our dignitaries all using separate private jets to go there?
Yeah, you'd think they'd all team in together. I mean, when the Queen died, they all shared a private jet, the royals, but King Charles wasn't exactly sharing his private jet. I just think Dubai is the least natural place in the world. It's like a man-made city, just completely and utterly not natural. And there they are sort of saying, let's sort of get back to nature and save Mother Nature. Well, they chose the wrong venue for that, I think.
John, your views on all of this. Do you think it's a necessity that we have to have all of these global elites meeting in one place to decide how we sort out the climate crisis?
Well, no, it'd be wonderful, Patrick, but yours is a counsel of despair. You know, why can't we only talk to democracies? Why can't we only talk to people who are not dictators? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? The world is as it is. We've got to try everything we can. And it's not an excuse for saying, because we can't do everything, we don't do anything. I mean, you know, we can't do everything means you've got to keep trying. And you particularly need to try with these oil-producing states. Now, if you say, oh, we're not going to go there, because all they'll be talking about is oil deals behind the corner, or they'll turn up in private jets. The cost of this, in terms of the private jets, is minimal compared with all the airline flights that are taking place every day. The cost, if you can try and get some people convinced, BP, for example, is now... BP, for example, which is an oil producer.
Absolutely
that's if you assume that the whole world is to do with optics. No, the whole world is to do with real things. And the real fact, which I think most people now realise, particularly this year, is that climate change is here with us, and it's causing devastating effects in terms of flooding, in terms of extreme temperatures. And if you don't think that, well, go ahead and bury your head in the sand. But if you do think that, and you think something should be done, then at least try getting other people together, all sorts of improbable characters, get them together as soon as you can, try and get them to talk seriously about what we should do. But if you then say, oh, why bother? Well, then what are we going to do for the rest of our days? We're just going to say, don't let's bother.
Do you know, how do you feel about the climate crisis, so-called climate crisis? Does it bother you? Does it keep you awake at night?
I mean, I definitely probably think about other things than the climate crisis itself. I think I'm probably too busy maybe looking at myself or how to improve my own life. But I think with this situation itself, I think the fact that they want to make such a big change with it, I have to agree with Charlotte, the fact that they've all travelled separately, it doesn't kind of make a lot of sense with that. They could have potentially changed location, maybe could have jumped on a tube. You wouldn't catch me on the Central Line, but, you know...
No, too hot.
Too hot on the Central Line for me. But they could have maybe potentially changed location, somewhere nearer, where it doesn't cost as much, and just slight little changes could have made it a bit better, but... That's my personal opinion.
I think, Johnny, you have got a very optimistic view of this, which I commend, fine, but Charlotte, should the King have been there? Because now I don't think you can really separate the politics of the climate agenda with it being a worthy cause. And I just wonder if he should have got involved in that. He's wearing his Greek tie as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was wearing
Shout out to the Elgin Marbles.
He definitely should have been there. I have to disagree with you on that because, as we all know, he's been preaching about climate change since, well, people say it's for 60 years. I mean, literally since he was an adult. And I think it completely transcends political affiliations. And he kept what he was saying very broad, actually, and was very careful not to make it too political. And it was almost the point of being quite wishy-washy. But, you know, he really just reminded people this is about nature. You know, he's a real naturalist, isn't he? And he, hugged trees. He literally hugs trees and things like that. So
I think also the question you often used to ask with these things is, what if he had been told he couldn't go? What if he'd been told that he'd spent all his life working away on this, people sneering at him, laughing at him and so on. But when he becomes king, we won't even let him say anything. And that would have been awful. It would have been awful for him personally, awful for all of us. It would have seemed so petty not to let him. He, in fact, played it, I thought, brilliantly today. I thought he was extremely careful. He didn't say anything. He said how serious it all was, but he didn't say, and my government's got it wrong or anything like that. So I think it was, it was a rather nice, rather moving way in which you can say, this man who's Prince of Wales becomes king, feels strongly about something, and of course should be allowed to speak about it in general terms, not in political terms, and certainly not in party political terms, not saying, let's wait for Keir Starmer to take over, or anything like that. No, he was very careful what he said. He was well within his rights, and I thought it was rather nice and rather moving to see him actually take his position as king.
I just worry, Janae, whether or not the little guy on the street, the average man and woman out there, who doesn't emit that much carbon, who doesn't really have anything massively directly to blame for the climate crisis that we've got at the moment, they're the ones who are made to pay. Things like ULEZ, for example, that was very controversial. Loads of people there have had to either sell their cars, and people are struggling with the cost of living crisis at the moment. There's stories about nurses who work night shifts, right? So they might go to work at 11 p.m, say, so they get done by the ULEZ on the way in, and then they get done by it on the way out when they come off shift at 8 a.m. or whatever it is. Do you think there is a sense that maybe the little people are the ones who are really paying for this stuff?
I think with any sort of changes like this, I think they are going to affect the people that potentially aren't able to afford any sort of changes and able to adapt to these changes, which does make it more difficult. I think from a personal point of view, it's a shame, really. I think there's so much that is kind of changing. It is affecting so many people in whatever kind of status they're in reality. And I think, is it helping? Is it not helping? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone like me, I'm quite young, I'm out there, I like to live a nice life, and it's like, can everyone keep up with this? Is it something that everyone can continue to do with all the change that I'm making? What is the next potential thing that's going to be a big shock? Do you know what I mean?
It always seems to cost. This is the thing. Where are we finding this 1.6 billion quid to give to whatever the heck that is, you know, something to do with wind farms in the Middle East and maybe helping out with, you know, kind of lesser developed countries if they have a climate disaster. You know, we've got people in this country, Charlotte, who are really, really struggling and being told that, oh, we're not really going to lower your taxes at any time soon. We're going to put more funding into this, more funding into that. We're not going to be able to give you help with, you know, heating your homes this winter. And then they see, well, we've got more than £1.5 billion to give to people we'll never meet.
Yeah, I agree with that, because if £1.5 billion is going to Africa, it's going to be a drop in the ocean. Africa's a very big place.
Also, no offence, but will it be spent in the... We don't know.
Yeah, it's untraceable. It's totally untraceable. And we're thinking all our hard-earned tax is going some mystery country far away, and it's probably not going to be managed properly, because let's face it, these things never are when they're sent abroad. And that is going to really frustrate people, I think. OK, all right. Well, look, we're going to just park it there for now. I'll be returning to my wonderful panel very, very shortly. But